The administration sending a message the southern border is not open. Welcome to Faith Nation from our studio in Washington, D.C. I'm John Jessup. Well, the perilous crisis at the border expected only to get worse with Thursday's expiration of a policy known as Title 42, which allows the U.S. to quickly expel migrants to contain the COVID pandemic. That change may lead to a surge of 1 million migrants. Places like El Paso already declaring a state of emergency ahead of its termination. And today, Secretary of Homeland Security Alejandro Mayorkas laid out tougher consequences for illegal crossings as Title 42 concludes.
The lifting of the Title 42 public health order does not mean our border is open. In fact, it is the contrary. Smugglers have long been hard at work spreading false information that the border will be open after May 11th. It will not be. They are lying. Do not risk your life and your life savings only to be removed from the United States if and when you arrive here.
Mayorkas says illegal migrants will be treated with the assumption of expulsion, and they'll have very limited chances to plead for asylum status. Meanwhile, as the Department of Homeland Security explores alternatives, concerns over long-term consequences of its demise continue. CBN's Chuck Holton brings us that story from the border.
Chaos at the southern border as up to 1 million people look to cross into the U.S. as Title 42 expires. While border agents expect a major rush when the COVID-related expulsion policy ends May 11th, the influx along the border has already begun. Agents in the Rio Grande Valley say smuggling organizations are bringing up to 10,000 per day to the border, and that's pushing U.S. border towns to their limits. Here in El Paso, Texas, officials declared a state of emergency May 1st.
We figure that it's anywhere between 10 to 12,000 people that are ready to come on May 11th, May 12th. We do know that there's additional coming right behind them, and we are going to be prepared. I did talk to the federal government the other day. I did talk to the Secretary of Mayorkas' office, and I told them that really we have to change. There's no end game to this, and we can't continue as a city and as a country.
This is becoming a serious humanitarian crisis here in downtown El Paso and many border communities along the U.S. southern border, as literally hundreds of thousands of migrants keep coming across the border, and they end up like this on the streets here behind me. Border Patrol agents are going around and passing out these flyers that encourage them to turn themselves in. And Secretary Mayorkas was here just a few days ago touting his new plan to fix this problem. But somehow that plan doesn't include fewer people coming to the United States. It just includes pre-approving them outside the U.S. and then flying them directly into the heartland of America.
We are reaching the people where they are. It is not only our security obligation, it is our humanitarian responsibility to cut the smugglers out, and that is indeed what we are doing. We are building pathways.
The hope is that as more people take advantage of these pathways, fewer will overwhelm the border. The pipeline of people surging north through Mexico, though, are unlikely to just go back home. Even those migrants arriving in the U.S. are finding things tougher than expected. More than 2,000 migrants now live on the streets in a few square blocks around the Sacred Heart Catholic Church here in El Paso.
Pero este es el primer vez en los Estados Unidos.
Ya había entrado 3 veces.
3 veces. He's been here 3 times already in the United States. Y 3 veces y lo votaron. And he was deported already 3 times.
With wait times for an asylum hearing already stretching into 2026, and from the numbers waiting in Mexico to cross later this week, things here will likely get much worse.
And Chuck joins us now. Chuck, always great to have you. First, let me just go ahead and start off by saying we're going to do this interview in English only. No one wants to hear my Spanish. Chuck, this is already characterized as a humanitarian crisis. We also know, though, it is a national security crisis. There's also a drug crisis associated with the border. When you factor all of that in, along with the images of what we're seeing at the border, many people just ask, how could it get any worse?
Well, and we're also looking at a political crisis. We've seen just this morning down around that church. The reason that people go to that church is because they claim asylum at the church and the police will not bother them or take them, detain them and arrest them if they're anywhere near that church. But they won't even let them in the church. They just build up trash and blankets and clothing. And even as we were out there talking to people yesterday, there are fleas and mites that are down there because of the filth. It's a very terrible situation. And because of that, the Biden administration is really nervous about what's about to happen. Word is that from the Guatemalan president, 80,000 Guatemalans are on their way up. And over the last 2 days, they've captured more than 10,000 people crossing illegally in each of the last 2 days. And that's a all-time record. They've never seen numbers like that before.
Chuck, I know that you've documented those travels along the Darien Gap, one perilous situation to another, as you just described there at the church. Secretary Mayorkas today said immigration enforcement authorities will now be able to carry out, those restrictions actually will be able to be carried out under Title VIII, insisting those authorities, when put in place, are actually tougher than Title 42 restrictions. Your thoughts?
Yeah, they're trying very hard to get that message across to the migrants, but it's not coming through. When you talk to the migrants on the ground, they're all saying that this is our moment, this is our chance to get to the United States. And almost all of them that we talk to are economic migrants. They're not fleeing war and oppression. They've already fled war and oppression years ago, and they've been living in Colombia or Ecuador or Peru or someplace like that. And they've chosen this moment to come to the United States because they believe, and they've been telling me this all day long, we believe that the door is open for us now, and that's why we're going to come.
Chuck, DHS Secretary Mayorkas and border officials on the ground seem to agree on one thing, and that is that the onus is on Congress to fix the problem. Chuck, in your opinion, what does Congress need to do in order to fix the influx at the border?
You know, Congress could very easily stop this by removing the pull factors that bring people to the United States and make them choose the U.S. over someplace like Chile, where they can make a good living as well. And what those pull factors are the money that they can make and send back to their home countries. And by some accounts, more than 40% of the entire amount of money that comes into Guatemala every year is remittances from the United States. So they could tax remittances, and they could make people ineligible as illegal migrants for things like welfare, for some of those programs that take U.S. taxpayer dollars and pay for education, healthcare, and things like that for people who are coming across the border illegally.
All right, CBN contributor Chuck Holton, always appreciate your intrepid reporting there on the border. Thank you so much, Chuck.
Thank you.